Hong Kong reports its first locally transmitted COVID cases after months of a virus-free streak. A Kowloon Tong restaurant where virus was spread is closed. And getting ready to ring in 2022. Good evening. Hong Kong reported its first locally transmitted Omicron infections. The two cases snapped the city's virus-free streak in the community since October, with the government sounding the alarm over a possible fifth wave of infections. Doubling down on anti-epidemic efforts, the government will dial up restrictions on unvaccinated Hong Kongers in eateries and public venues, such as cinemas. Jackie Lin begins our coverage.
Hong Kong's very first Omicron infections detected in the community also marked the city's first local cases in 3 months. According to authorities, they have likely contracted the virus from one of 4 earlier infected air crew members. The pilot flouted home quarantine rules and dined out in a restaurant. There, he infected his father and a construction worker who dined at another table. That precipitated a raft of toughened anti-epidemic measures.
In the context of Omicron in the severe situation, especially globally, we think it is important for us to exercise and implement the most stringent measures.
Entry to all eateries and regulated premises, including cinemas, gyms, and libraries, will require at least 1 jab. The vaccine requirements will be mandated before February, the Lunar New Year period. The government will also impose a deadline for staff at these public venues to be inoculated.
It is also important for the public to protect themselves by vaccination. And why before Chinese New Year? Because we understand, during the holiday, people will be gathering, people will be, coming together. So it is important for them to protect themselves.
Community vaccination centers will extend service hours starting Saturday. The government says a record number of nearly 20,000 residents got tested for the coronavirus over the past few days after receiving alerts about infection risks from the Li Peng Safe app. Gearing up for a potential onslaught of Omicron cases, authorities will reboot operations of the community treatment facilities at Asia World Expo, with 500 hospital beds set to be made available starting Sunday. At public hospitals, medical staff providing emergency services will have to get COVID screened every day. While the Omicron strain is said to elicit less severe symptoms than earlier variants, it's more transmissible than the Delta variant, with a higher reinfection risk among recovered COVID patients. Jackie Lin, TV News.
The Omicron-infected Cathay Pacific crew member visited the Moon Palace restaurant in Kowloon Tong's Festival Walk Mall. 2 patrons in the restaurant were confirmed to have caught the virus. A government health advisor believes there could be an outbreak cluster there. Timothy Lee has that story.
The Moon Palace restaurant has now been temporarily closed, and the Festival Walk Mall has installed temporary testing centers. Citizens who visited the mall after Monday afternoon will have to take COVID-19 tests by tomorrow. The confirmed patients include a 44-year-old Cathay Pacific crew member, his 76-year-old father, and a male construction worker. The crew member was dining with family members at the green table, while the construction worker dined at the purple table, with a distance of about 9 meters. Government advisor Professor David Hui said a cluster has appeared in the restaurant and urged citizens who visited there to get tested quickly. Other sources said the infected crew member, who resided in Discovery Bay, visited a bar in Central 3 days after arriving in the city. Hui said the common practice of removing masks in bars raises the infection risk significantly, and called upon residents to stay home during New Year's Eve. Hui added those who participate in larger events and crowds must remember to wear masks. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the city's daily total of coronavirus cases soared to 19 today. 17 imported cases were identified, with all of them likely to be carrying the Omicron variant. They involve arrivals from the UK, US, Canada, and the Philippines. 16 others have tested preliminary positive for the virus. Among the presumptive cases is a 30-year-old airline ground staff member. As the case likely involves the Omicron strain, authorities have put Block 2 Granda Terrace in Tin Shui Wai, where she lives, under overnight lockdown. All residents there have to be screened for COVID. Starting at midnight, air cargo crew members must undergo 7 days of quarantine in designated hotels after flying into Hong Kong. The new government mandate comes after Cathay Pacific crew members violated a 3-day home quarantine arrangement. Sharon Tang has more.
As a measure to fight the pandemic, Cathay Pacific had earlier introduced the so-called closed-loop management. Under the plan, aircrew members on board passenger flights who have worked for 3 weeks in a row must undergo quarantine in hotels in the city for 2 weeks before they enter the community. But as many employees were upset by the plan, the airline later changed the protocols. Aircrew members who were on board passenger flights would return to Hong Kong via cargo flights and would only need to undergo 3 days of quarantine at home. But with more aircrew members infected with Omicron and having sneaked out for meals during their stay-home order, the airline has further tightened the measures. Sources say all crew members who have been in contact with passengers must now undergo at least 7 days of quarantine in the city. The government has today criticized those who have flouted the rules.
佢哋咧係不負責任嘅行為咧。
They were being irresponsible. So a large number of residents have to be sent to quarantine centers or have to take repeated tests during the New Year holidays. The Chief Executive made it clear that she would not accept any such violation of the rules. She has demanded the chairman of the Cathay Pacific to conduct a review in person on the cases and to give the public a satisfactory explanation.
Amy, who is a Cathay Pacific flight attendant, said a lot of her colleagues were not ready for the new arrangement. In a statement issued today, the airline noted the actions of individual crew members are extremely disappointing and that disciplinary procedures will be taken. The city's flagship carrier added it's operating all flights with fully vaccinated aircrew only and they are tested frequently. It added the health and well-being of customers and the community remain its top priority. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
2 fatal traffic accidents this evening left 3 people dead and several others injured. In Sanpo Kong, dashcam footage showed a yellow private car driving very fast before veering onto the pedestrian sidewalk and ploughing into a currency exchange shop. A 23-year-old woman was killed at the scene. 5 others, including the driver, were taken to hospital. One of them, a 63-year-old man, was later certified dead. Initial investigations showed the vehicle had likely lost control. Another deadly hit-and-run accident involved a minibus which hit a pedestrian in Yau Ma Tei. An 80-year-old man was trapped onto the bus, but the operator kept driving for 17 kilometers all the way to Shun Wan, where it was intercepted by the police. Overseas, the number of new COVID cases are continuing to rise in many countries across Europe. England's National Health Service is setting up extra care facilities in a bid to preempt a possible surge of Omicron patients. Meanwhile, protests against new pandemic restrictions got underway in Barcelona. In Italy, people rushed to get tested for COVID-19 ahead of New Year's Eve. England's National Health Service is building temporary structures at hospitals around the country to prepare for a potential influx of patients suffering with the Omicron variant of COVID-19. Each surge hub will have the capacity to treat around 100 patients. Plans are also in place to create 4,000 extra beds in total, should they be required. Still, concerns have arisen there will be a lack of staff to help run the facilities, as many NHS workers have tested positive for the coronavirus. New daily COVID cases in the UK have risen sharply in recent days, largely fueled by the spread of the Omicron variant. Public health experts have warned the sheer number of infections could cause a spike in hospitalizations and deaths. That's despite early data suggesting that Omicron could be less likely to lead to severe illness than previously discovered strains. Elsewhere, hundreds protested in Barcelona against new pandemic restrictions that have been implemented throughout Spain, such as outdoor mask mandates for those aged over 6 years old. Participants, many not wearing face masks, marched to the city's Arc de Triomphe Square, where an improvised party was held. The demonstration took place despite Spain facing an unprecedented surge in coronavirus cases. According to the country's health ministry, Thursday was the 2nd day in a row when new infections surpassed 100,000. In Italy, thousands of people throughout the nation flocked to get tested for COVID ahead of New Year's Eve. Government and local authorities have banned large public outdoor and indoor events on December 31st due to the threat posed by the Omicron variant. But small-scale private gatherings prohibited last year due to the emergence of the Delta strain may go ahead. Across the globe, people are ready to bid a good riddance to 2021 and wish for fresh hope in 2022. In many places, New Year's Eve celebrations will be muted because of a second year of a surge in COVID-19 infections, this time driven by the Omicron variant. Al Buckner reports.
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
In New York, rehearsals for the famous New Year's Eve ball drop. After banning revelers from Times Square a year ago, city officials announced plans for a scaled-back celebration with smaller crowds and vaccinations required.
They're going to see a lot of entertainment. Not only are they going to see this Times Square ball, they're going to see Journey, Don't Stop Believin'. We're ready for a good 2022.
In Sydney, where there's also been a rapid spread of cases, people were lined up to get tested ahead of their New Year's plans. The New South Wales Health Minister had a suggestion for a New Year's resolution.
Please don't stand on your dig. If you've told your mates that I'm not going to have it because of whatever, well, now's the time to actually say, you know what, I'm thinking about it. It's a new year, I'm going to change my ways and get a vaccination.
In India, large crowds gathered on the beach in Goa for New Year's Eve, even as the government imposed tougher restrictions to curb the latest spike in infections. Authorities in Goa issued directives to hotels, restaurants, and casinos to only admit guests with vaccination certificates or negative test results. In Rio de Janeiro, the site of Brazil's famous fireworks, tourists flocked to the beaches. After announcing a complete cancellation of all celebrations earlier this month, city officials will now allow the massive fireworks display. The local government, however, still canceled other public celebrations and concerts aimed at reducing crowds. Alan Burknia, TVB News.
Israel has approved a fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine for people most vulnerable as it braces for a wave of infections fueled by the Omicron variant. Israel launched trials on a fourth dose earlier this week, administering it to about 150 medical personnel. It is among the first countries to roll out the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine a year ago and began administering boosters in the summer. But it still saw a wave of infections because of the Delta variant, and officials warn of another surge because of Omicron. Still, there is some debate among health professionals about whether a fourth dose is necessary. Israel says it will begin administering the shots immediately to heart transplant patients and others most vulnerable. President Xi Jinping delivered a New Year address touring in 2020 earlier this evening. Bidding farewell to 2021, Xi described it as a meaningful year as the country celebrates its centenary and has successfully eradicated poverty this year. The country has also been concerned with the stability and prosperity of Hong Kong and Macau. He also stressed the importance of the country to work towards the goal of unification with solidarity. And now we move to local New Year's Eve festivities where we have cameras at 4 locations. Most of the restaurants in Lang Kwai Fong where revelers have gathered this evening to celebrate the occasion have been fully booked 2 weeks in advance of New Year's Eve. Operating hours of the escalators in Central have been extended to 3 a.m. to cater for those looking to celebrate. Road closures there will remain in place in Lang Kwai Fong until 5 a.m. They'd come into force this afternoon, and that was to ensure smooth traffic flow and public safety.
亦都好似頭先所講啦，我哋咧大家心中都可以諗定，大家係想祈求啲乜嘢嘅祝願啦，喺心裏邊準備嘅嚇。好啦，倒數30秒啦，我哋3個地方嘅朋友咧已經準備好一齊迎接2022年㗎啦。
Another concert is being held on Lantau Island. Apart from performances from singers and a Chinese orchestra, leading political figures, including Chief Executive Carol Lam, are also attending the event. And in Central, 520 drones are flying above the sky of Victoria Harbour in what is going to be an innovative way to celebrate the new year. That's as part of a concert which kicked off earlier, which saw numerous celebrities take the stage. of course, saw celebrities take to the stage earlier to perform and excite the crowd. One of the show's sponsors had set aside 1,000 tickets so that those from low-income families get a chance to attend the occasion. Now, Carrie Lam was just there on Lantau Island to celebrate the festivities, along with other leading political figures. They ushered in the new year by ringing the bell next to the Big Buddha, and they'll pray for good fortune for Hong Kong there. And accompanying the concert, there will be an aerial drone show that will illuminate the skies atop the Big Buddha. They will form pictures and bear messages of good wishes for the new year ahead.
我谨代表中央政府驻港联络办，代表骆慧宁主任，祝福所有市民朋友新年吉祥，祝福。
And let's take a look at the weather now. It will be cloudy with temperatures between 17 and 21 degrees on New Year's Day, sunny and cool Sunday and Monday. And we leave you now with some fireworks that did go ahead early tonight at the always spectacular Sydney display over the Harbour Bridge and Sydney Opera House.